Been married. She follows them on Instagram. They both have 1.2 million followers. So they are pretty big influence, right? There's a lot of Christians that like to follow their show. Their standards are very obvious and very strict. I don't know exactly what they are, but I know that everywhere they go, they have a chaperone, which is a younger sibling, on every date that they go on. There's no such thing as physical touch until marriage. I mean, not just kissing, but like it's side hugs until you're married, and there's all these different things, standards that they follow. And it's what I think is amazing is that the kids actually do it. Like the parents, I'm sure, had to feel, man, if we live this way, will our kids actually follow? Because I was a kid one time inside of a house that was with some pretty strict rules, and I wasn't so good at following the rules. These kids are somehow cut from a different fabric, right? And they do it well. And then you have the Kardashians, who are not on the TLC, but probably on like MTV or some kind of another channel where they allow, different types of boundaries. And you see that the Kardashians and the way they live their life is just completely different, right? Most youth today would probably choose to live in a Kardashian standard way of life than a Duggar's standard way of life. And my thought was, where should aspiring pastors and leaders be? Like, where should our relationship boundaries really be? And I hope that all of you who are single have considered this, to ask yourself, when that moment comes when I meet the special someone in my life and I want to get to know this person, what are my boundaries going to be? I'll tell you this, that if you don't have those boundaries set up before the relationship happens, you'll have a hard time setting them up as a relationship starts. You've got to kind of have this preconceived idea already of what my relationship is going to look like. How can my relationship honor God? What kind of boundaries would God ask me to have, or what kind of boundaries would God want for me to have in a relationship, right? So think about those things. Reach out to your mentor during the next few weeks and maybe talk about healthy relationships in terms of that significant other, because that's probably not too far away for many of you. I want to just share two scriptures with you in relationship to these boundaries, and then we'll move forward. So the first one is out of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18. It says, "Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against his own body." 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness?" And I particularly like this verse, and anytime I have the opportunity to speak to somebody in terms of relationships, this is a verse that I use, and you probably were raised hearing this verse, right? So you've always heard the preacher preach a sermon about not being unequally yoked in a relationship. And that basically goes to say you can't be a Christian and date a non-Christian, right? I mean, that's really what they're trying to say is, it's hard for you to be someone who's passionately serving Jesus and dating someone who has absolutely no passion for Jesus but has a very aggressive, deep passion for you. Like, how does that work out? And every once in a while you hear a Nick and Keo story where it works, right? Keo's on fire for God, meets Nick, who has no idea who God is. They fall in love with each other. Keo should have never done it, but in the back of her mind she's hoping it works out. And in her favor it works out, and now Nick and Keo are just great men of God. But that's the one of the 100, because the other 99 never end that way, right? What usually happens is the influencers, the non-Christian, they take them. So I want you, and do you have the picture of the yoke? So I want you to look at this picture and this is what that word this is what it literally means. When it means to not be unequally yoked, it means don't have one of those wrapped around your neck and have it wrapped around someone else's neck that's not like you. And so I want to challenge you to think of it a little bit differently. It's not so much saying non-Christian, Christian. Okay, that's the obvious. Mm-hmm. But so for singles and for married people, it's very important that all of us as leaders be very careful with who we're attached to.
Yes.
Because any two animals that go in the opposite direction will be ineffective.
Amen.
It's not about how much, at the end of the day, the job of that tool is to keep these two oxen going in one direction. And they both have the same idea of work. They both understand this means get to work, right? And so when we, in relationships or in leadership, when we are yoked with somebody who is not like-minded or who does not share our same passion, even if they're off just a few degrees, I mean, it doesn't have to be a big difference. A small difference makes a huge impact in our life. Like if they just have a different kind of idea about school and they're yoked to you, they're gonna just slowly go in another direction. But at the first few days, it's minimal. But over the course of 365 days, that margin has now really grown. And before you know it, you realize, I didn't realize that I'm this far away from where God actually started me. It's very crucial that in your life, not in your relationships with like a romantic relationship, but it's very important that as leaders, we really safeguard who we are connected to. Because every relationship that is not healthy for you will eventually deter you from where you're supposed to be. And then you have to answer the question, if I could go back, what would I do different? And all of those answers really pertain to this. Like I would have been yoked to someone who was better financially. I would have been yoked to someone who would have kept me on the right path, right? So two animals, two oxen with the same heart, with the same desire, get a lot done.
Amen.
But two oxen that are not like-hearted really struggle, right? The same amount of work is more difficult because not only are you trying to pull something, but you're also trying to keep something close. And there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of issues that come with trying to keep somebody focused like you. Like it's hard to bring someone alongside you when they don't want to be, right? It's hard to work with people that are going in another direction. I mean, it's hard to deal with people who see things differently, and it's very important that you work with those people, but you don't attach to those people, because then it really doubles the labor that you have to do. That makes sense? So that's all I'm going to talk about with relationships. But I want to talk about something different with boundaries, okay? Boundaries say a lot. Okay, so I need you guys to just have your imagination with me. Boundaries say a lot. Say that in your head. Boundaries say a lot. Okay? Boundaries, I said to say that in your head and everyone needs to. So boundaries say a lot. Okay, so close your eyes and I want you to envision something with me. You are driving kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly you see off in the distance this big structure. Okay, it looks nice. It's a castle-looking structure. Okay, you don't know what it is quite yet until you get closer to it, and all of a sudden you see this 20-foot fence with rolled barbed wire all across the top. What are you looking at?
Prison.
You're looking at a prison. Okay, now you can open your eyes. You're looking at a prison, right? You can see in it, but you'll never get in it, right? Okay, close your eyes. You're driving. You are in Mexico. You're right in the middle of Juarez. You continue forward, and all of a sudden you see this river. Behind the river is this tall fence. What are you looking at? You're looking at the border fence, right? That fence clearly says you can stay on your side and I'll stay on my side. That's what that boundary says. You stay there, we'll stay here. Okay, close your eyes. You're driving, you're in a nice neighborhood. You see this beautiful house with this 8-foot fence that's painted very pearly white. It's called a what fence? It's called a privacy fence, right? And that fence says, it clearly says, mind your own business. Right? That's what it says. Okay? Close your eyes one more time. You're driving, you're in this beautiful neighborhood, and then you get to this organization or church, whatever. It has a beautiful fence, and at the front entry it has a beautiful gate that is open. What do you see? It could be a church, it could be a business, but you know what that boundary says? You're welcome.
Yes.
So I want to challenge you to think of it like this. As a leader, every time you walk into a place of influence, people see the boundary that you have around you. And so as leaders, sometimes we have a 20-foot fence with barbed wire all the way around. And you know what that says? You can see me, but you'll never get to be part of who I am. And as leaders, we got to be very careful with the kind of boundaries we surround ourselves with, right? Because when you walk into your place of influence, pastor, missionary, evangelist, whoever you are, when you walk into that place where people see you as a leader, they see your boundary first. They know, and so the word here is approachable. They know how approachable you are. If you have those barbed wires around your fence, they know I can see you, but I can't touch you. And as leaders, we have to be very careful to identify those. With the border fence, what it says is, we don't see eye to eye. You mind your business, I'll mind my business. We can be in the same area, but you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. And sometimes when we walk into our place of influence, people know this about you. People know this about me. They know she doesn't really have any interest in me whatsoever. She'll tolerate me, but as far as being close to her, it's not going to really happen. Again, it goes back to the word approachable, right? So we have this border fence that says, you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. In the church setting, it says, you sit in that section, I'll sit in this section, right? You check in your kid first. When you're out of the nursery, then I'll go and check in my kid. Or when I see you go into the cafe, I'll wait till you exit the cafe, and then I'll go into the cafe. This is the reality of approachable. And it's not how we view it, it's how people view it in us. Right? So some people see a border fence all around you, and all that says to them is, you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. Right? The third one is the privacy fence, which means clearly mind your own business. So as a leader, one of the attributes of good leadership is approachability. Like, are you approachable? As a pastor, as a leader in my life, can I go to you and have conversation with you? Can I go to you and have a good talk with you? Are you approachable? And sometimes we have this privacy fence around us that says, you mind your own business. Right? Like, so you're always looking at those who gossip or looking at those who slander and so you've built this privacy fence around you saying, no one's going to touch me. Like, no one's going to get into my life. Like, I'm in here, but you'll never really know me. So that we lose the authentic part of our leadership. That makes sense to you? And then the healthy boundary that all Christian leaders need to really have is this beautiful fence with an open gate. Like, sure, we all need boundaries. No one ever said we did not need boundaries. We need boundaries in relationships. We need boundaries. In our family structure, we need boundaries. In our leadership life, we need boundaries. In your family structure, you need boundaries. In your marriage, you need boundaries. Raising children, there needs to be established boundaries. There needs to be a place that says, this is my territory, this is my responsibility. Within the limits of this boundary, I'm responsible for the terrain, for the grass, for the weeds. Like, we all have we all live in boundaries. It's very healthy to have boundaries. We need boundaries. But it's very healthy to have a gate at your boundary that has this sign that says welcome, like it's a revolving door. Like, you can come in and you can go out kind of thing. Because my boundaries are already established, but I made room for you. And you're asking God in your prayer time, use me. Like, make me into an influence. I want to make an impact for you, God, in my life. Like, I want to be not only do I just want to be a pastor, I want to be effective. Like, I want to reach people. I want people to go to heaven because of this church. I want people to go and experience true freedom because of my God. Like, we want to be effective. We'd be lying if we said we did not. But every healthy leader has healthy boundaries, right? And every healthy leader has this attribute called approachability, like approachable. I'm approachable. It doesn't matter how big I am, how smart I am, my gate says welcome in. Like, you're welcome to come in and be a part of that. So I want to share with you, there's 5 leadership attributes to being approachable. So these come from John Hall, who many of you know. He's the CFO of Influence & Company. Okay, so he's a big leader. And in one of his latest articles, he put out 5 attributes to being approachable. And I want to share these with you, okay? The first one is share your failures. Now listen, leaders. Put yourself into your leadership shoes, your leadership suit, your leadership dress, whatever outfit identifies you as a leader. Put yourself into that outfit. And then let's think about these things. Share your failures. No one wants to talk about their mistakes with someone who can't recognize his own. Putting pride aside and realizing that it's okay to admit your failures will only strengthen communication within your church. Like, put your pride aside and be vulnerable with people, even though you're the leader. Like, it's okay to be the person in charge and share some of your weaknesses. And when you're mentoring somebody or in a relationship with somebody and they begin to be vulnerable with you and you never share with them some of the things that you've messed up in, eventually they'll stop listening to you, because it's hard to share your heart with someone who won't share their heart with you.
Amen.
And we're talking about being approachable.
Yes.
This is an attribute to great leadership. That means share your failures. Like, I've messed up in that too. I know you're asking me to answer that question, But before I give you the answer of how I learned the hard way, know that I learned the hard way in that area. Number 2 is step down from the pedestal. So letting my guard down encourages others to do the same. It shows people that I'm human too. So within every structure, within every organization, there is an organizational chart, right?
Yep.
And so that organizational chart, what it really does is it puts everybody in their place. You know who's above you, you know who's beside you, and you know who is below you. And most people struggle with that. It's very hard to have relationship with people that are on your side, right? Because in the context of church, that causes quarrels, right? We have this positional pride issue in the church setting, that it's hard to work with people who are above you that are younger than you. It's hard to work with people who are above you that are less experienced than you. There's all these different scenarios within an organizational chart that really touch and test your character. But in terms of being approachable, it is very important that as the leader, as the person in charge of whatever, it's very important that you step off of the pedestal that the organizational chart puts you in to come down to the level and say, just because I fill that role doesn't mean I'm not a human being just like you. So it's very important to sometimes take off the pastor hat and just be like, let's just talk like regular people talk. Like when you ask me a question, I'm not going to pull out my anointing oil. I can actually talk about things that have nothing to do with church too.
Amen.
It's important to build credibility, and it's very important to build your approachability with other people. They need to know that I can come to you and ask you a question about something that has nothing to do with church and not get a church lecture about it.
Amen.
If you don't do it right the first time, they might never come back a second time.
Very true.
And you want people to follow you because they know you, not because of what you know.
Amen.
So think about the fence in this question, right? Think about, in every one of these scenarios, think about the kind of fence you have in terms of these different steps that this guy is giving us, right? The third one is be transparent and real. It means having difficult conversations about how we can improve, or telling a client or another fellow leader why the relationship isn't working out. Wait a second. How many times do you find yourself in a relationship with somebody and you think to yourself, this just isn't working out? Like, I know you signed up in LifeTrack to work in my department. This isn't working out. Like, our personalities are way different. Like, they're like Amos and Crystal different. Like, I'm a DI and she's an SC. Together we're the disc test. Like, we're nothing alike. And there's a lot of times in our leadership that we are working with someone who really is different. Their approach is different. The way they do school, the way they study, you just look at them and be like, you're weird. Like, how does that work for you? But in the context of being the leader in this scenario, it's very important that we learn to be transparent and real. Like, having a tough conversation with someone so that you don't prolong something. So if I'm having an issue with Dr. Martinez and there's some things that we're just not clicking on, we're just not agreeing on, and it's causing tension in our relationship, therefore it's causing tension in our workspace, in our environment. People are starting to catch on to this tension, okay? Students, do you guys ever have tension among each other? Yeah, all the time, right? So when you identify, hey, this tension actually has something to do with my boundary. Like, this barbed wire fence that's surrounding me is affecting you, and I can see that. As a good leader, my job or your job, whoever's the dominant leader in the relationship, is to be bold enough to come and say, let's talk about why this isn't working. Let me tell you how I feel, and then I'm going to shut my mouth, and you're going to tell me how you feel. And our objective is to somehow take the barbed wire fence off and get to a welcoming gate. So we want to be transparent and real. It might be hard at first, but people will grow to listen to this. It will be hard at first, but people will grow to appreciate your openness and trust that your words are genuine. That means that when there is tension or conflict, and you're a part of it, go and start the conversation. Go and talk about the boundary. Go and discuss it. It might be hard at first, but when it is fixed, that person will look and say, I appreciate the fact that you were open and genuine with your words. We still don't see eye to eye, but I respect the fact that you noticed it and we talked about it. We're talking about being a leader. We're talking about leading people. And if you're leading people and you're not approachable, you will be frustrated, and everyone working with you will be frustrated with you. So you've got to be transparent and real. The fourth one is get outside your leadership bubble. Learning something new each week is a great way to build your personal knowledge bank and relate to employees, potential clients, or partners on an individual level. Here's the key. Go outside of your comfort zone, no matter how small the effort, and you'll find your conversations naturally leading to more memorable interactions. Let me put it to you like this. In a church setting, in our church setting, okay, on Easter we had 1,100 people. That's 1,100 people. Okay, there are 1,100 people from different types of environments. 1,100 people from different journeys. 1,100 people from different neighborhoods. 1,100 people from different cultures. 1,100 people from different languages. 1,100 people with different habits. 1,100 people with different things that they like to do, right? Like they have different hobbies. 1,100 people with different mentalities. 1,100 people with different educational journeys. 1,100 people that are just different. All 1,100 people are different. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, 1,100 different puzzle pieces. And your job as a leader is to somehow influence these people to follow the vision that you feel so strongly God gave you for your church. So our job as a leadership team is to somehow connect to people where they like to connect. The problem is many times as leaders is we go and have conversations with people that we feel comfortable about having a conversation with. So I like sports. So it would not be in my best interest to go to one of those 1,100 people who particularly do not like sports and try to carry a conversation about sports, because in that conversation I'm comfortable. What this is alluding to is, why don't I as a leader learn to go outside of my comfort zone and learn a little bit about everything, so when I get in touch with someone who has none of my interests, I can have a conversation about their interests. So if I want to talk about sports and this individual talks about politics, I want to have some type of knowledge. I want to at least know what the elephant means, right? Like what is this stuff with, like, what's a Democrat, brother? And they're looking at you saying, you're the pastor.